This week's flag is Ukraine. Now, 3 years ago, last week, Russia illegally invaded eastern Ukraine. Having already annexed Crimea in 2014, and with the world having done absolutely nothing about it, Russia tried again and invaded the Donbass area of eastern Ukraine. This time, the world did respond and did provide support to Ukraine. 3 years on, the war's still ongoing. And what is supposed to be one of the largest superpowers in the world militarily is being met with resistance by the incredibly brave Ukrainian soldiers who are fighting for their country and for their territory. Now, you have all probably seen the utterly disastrous meeting that happened in Washington, D.C. Last week. It's over the weekend, I want to say. Vladimir Zelenskyy, the president of Ukraine, and Donald Trump, the president of the United States, met in the Oval Office, and in front of the world media had one of the biggest political spat and disagreements and shouting match I've ever seen. I've never seen anything like it, and I'm still shell-shocked by how bad it went. Now, I'm not saying every single leader in the world needs to agree with one another. I'm sure after World War II, I'm going to use some of historical knowledge here. I'm sure after World War II, when Stalin met with Churchill at Yalta, they probably weren't the best buds. But they had a common aim, which was to defeat the Nazi Germany. Well, it's not quite how it went last weekend in Washington. The meeting descended into utter chaos. Vladimir Zelenskyy left the White House. The press conference was never had. The trade deal was never signed, and it seems to be that he was even asked to leave the White House by the cabinet in Washington. So he flew to London, met up with European leaders who did show the support. I woke up this morning, looked at the news, and it looks like the US has actually officially paused whilst reviewing any funding to Ukraine's war effort. So what does that mean? Year 13 to learn about superpowers. Well, what that means is Russia knows that the US does not have the backing of Ukraine. So Russia knows that Ukraine's one of Ukraine's biggest allies is stepping back. So Russia doesn't provide. Slip of the tongue there. Ukraine doesn't get most of its support from the USA. Most funding comes from the European powers, but the USA is the single biggest contributor to the Ukraine war effort. So the fact they're withdrawing the support, temporarily pausing the support, is clearly a sign that they're going to have to scramble to find the funds. What that means for Vladimir Putin, who's probably watching this thinking, brilliant, is exactly what I want, is unclear. And what that means for Europe is also very unclear. Ukraine isn't in NATO, but European powers are in NATO. The USA is in NATO, and the question is, well, if Russia were to invade a Baltic state like Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, would the USA stick to Article 5 of an attack on one is an attack on everyone? That's a big, big question. When Vladimir Zelenskyy met European leaders in London, all the European leaders were there. The NATO Secretary General was there. The Canadian Prime Minister was there. The American representatives were not. So you do start to wonder whether NATO isn't potentially breaking up, whether there's going to be a European version of NATO, whether the USA might withdraw from NATO. So many questions about the kind of global world system as we know it post-Bretton Woods after World War II. It's a long video, but it's an incredibly complex topic.